Before we begin our debate, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Alfonsa Vita Mukakawang Samarakati. You can call me Vita. I am the first speaker in this debate.
Hello, my name is Regina Alus. You can call me In. I am the second speaker as Pros.
Hello, my name is Sortao Esmeralda Manurung. You can call me Alda. I am third speaker as Cons.
We are 7th semester students from Agrotechnology Program Study. Let's start begin.
The topic of this debate is the role of the agricultural sector during the COVID-19 pandemic. A pandemic is a disease outbreak that occurs simultaneously everywhere, covering a wide geographic area, such as all countries or continents. In other words, a pandemic is a disease that affects the whole world and becomes a problem for all the citizens of the world. One example is the pandemic that has occurred since December 2019 and is still going on today. COVID-19 is an infection disease caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus that attack the human respiratory system and can cause mild disorder of the respiratory system, severe lung infection, and even death. In Indonesia, the first case occurred in March, and so far it has claimed 144,000 lives. Since the beginning of this pandemic entering Indonesia, there have been many regulations set by the government to reduce the spread of this virus, including lockdown, PSBB, PPKM, swab and rapid test rules to the COVID-19 vaccine. This makes COVID-19 severely limit the lives of Indonesian people from various sectors, causing an increase in the unemployment rate and having a significant impact on the community economy. Many people have complained and stopped their activities because of COVID-19 pandemic. At the beginning of 2021, optimism for Indonesia's economic recovery emerged in line with the realization of growth in first quarter to 2021, which was recovered minus 0.74%, improving compared to the previous quarters. This economic condition can be separated from the strategy of integrating economic and health policies. However, various challenges arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, such as poverty, inequality, unemployment, and food security, need to be carefully anticipated. Various restrictions during the pandemic and FAO's early warning about food crisis have increased our awareness of the importance of food security in the long term. Food security also affects the welfare of farmers, where the welfare of farmers is one of the key to sustainable food production. From the point of the urgency, agriculture is a sector that supports food security, which will be crucial in times of economic crisis. That is not only limited to survival, but also a matter of people's nutritional intake. In 1997 until 1998, monetary crisis left a generation with severe stunting and malnutrition among children, and this had a permanent impact. Therefore, the role of agriculture is urgent needed in terms of providing adequate food supply and distribution, as well as quality food production and processing to ensure that the community food and nutritional needs are fulfilled. In an effort to achieve this goal, agriculture is faced with a challenge where the COVID-19 pandemic has not shown certainty when it will end, so the lifting of social restriction or PSBB, which severely restricts community activities, may be delayed. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will listen to the arguments between pro and cons about this topic with the motion that I have presented. We start from the arguments of pro.
The COVID-19 pandemic will have various effects on various sectors of the economy. UNPAD's economic modeling analysis projects that the manufacturing and industrial sectors will also be severely affected. This analysis also concludes that the agriculture sector will be the least affected compared to other sectors. This happens because the impact of social restrictions will be relatively minimal on the agricultural sector, although there are still risks from supply chain disruptions, and in addition to the impact of social restrictions, the impact of which is relatively small because the center of agricultural production is not in a densely populated area. The agricultural sector, especially food crops, will naturally not be served as other sectors during a crisis. This happens because of the nature of agricultural goods, which have low elasticity of demand. When the economy is experiencing a boom period, demand will not increase rapidly, nor during a recession, demand will not decrease drastically. The history of the crisis in Indonesia, for example, the 1997 until the 1998 monetary crisis, also left a record of the relative persistence of the agricultural sector and even reaccommodation of workers who lost their jobs in urban areas. It seems that the role of the agricultural sector as a buffer sector in times of crisis will repeat itself this year, where we are currently facing the COVID-19 pandemic.
From the consideration above, it makes sense to open up space for flexibility for agricultural sector activities during the social extraction or PSBB. However, this flexibility requires a few safeguards. First, the risk of being exposed to the coronavirus in the agricultural and rural sector cannot be ignored. It's true that the production activities, unlike other sectors, are carried out outdoors in relatively large areas of land and low density areas. However, there are several aspects that become a source of vulnerability. Farmers, for example, have an average and in range of rather elderly and elderly 45 until 30 years. So, they are a vulnerable group and are at risk is exposed to the COVID-19 virus. Then, although the density is low in production activities, it does not mean low density in non-production activities in rural areas such as settlements and in traditional markets. In addition, the level of education in rural areas is relatively low, making people understanding of virus protection protocols such as hand washing, safe sneezing, possibly lower than in urban areas. The rise is also covered by rural geographical conditions, which are often quite remote and far from adequate health facilities to treat patients exposed to COVID-19. Finally, seasonal migration, such as the Eid homecoming, as well as unemployment in urban areas as a result of the crisis, will make rural communities quite vulnerable to COVID-19 from immigrants.
Okay, thank you. For problems such as those presented, we can show empathy and partiality to farmers. Currently, the COVID-19 handling campaign still seems based only in urban areas. However, farmers are one of the professions that often experience uncertainty, both from nature such as weather and from market realization. The COVID-19 pandemic crisis has added to the source of uncertainty among economic actors, including farmers. Leaders at the center and regions need to have more intensive dialogue with farmers and agricultural actors to explore problems starting from big things that are structural in nature as well as the tiny things in the field. Traders in the main market and production centers on the outskirts must be observed and dialogue to solve problems. In addition, calm and certainty among farmers will help farmers' physical and mental resilience to face the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. For this, it is necessary to optimize institutions and increase the sense of sectoral crisis. It is necessary to create a special working group for the handling of the agricultural sectors.
I think the solution must be integrated by including the agricultural support sector in special treatment. The most important sector include the transportation and logistics sector that connects agricultural products to the market, as well as the sector that transport inputs, both raw material as well as machinery or heavy equipment that are important in agricultural production activities. Currently, this activity is starting to be disrupted by limited mobility with the social responsibility policy or PSBB, specifically related to the plantation sector, such as coffee. The condition of the global economy is exacerbated and its essential level is not as high as that of basic necessities. The plantation sector also has difficulty finding workers for the harvest period due to the reduced mobility as a result of social restriction.
Okay, if that problems like that, countries at this time of crisis are present more intensively in intervening distribution. In theory, the role of the state is legitimate and even increase allocative efficiency in the event of market failure due to extraordinary case. What is more specific is in distributing agricultural production from production centers in rural areas to communities, especially in urban areas and other target markets. Market operations through direct purchase of agricultural products don't appear to be something that is forbidden under these conditions. Of course, it is limited by budget availability. However, the fiscal stimulus impact by the COVID pandemic of IDR 400 trillion, which was partially funded by a budget deficit of 5.07% of GDP, is one source of financing. A total of 150 trillion is budgeted to help the industry. The allocation of some of these funds to farmers is economically and morally justifiable. Concretely, and to be more explicit, it is recommended that there be a special fiscal stimulus fund for the agriculture sector. In addition, extra social assistance provided by local governments can also be channeled by aligning the purchase of basic needs products produced by surrounding agricultural centers. Thank you.
Okay, but the flexibility of relaxation of agricultural sector activities during the COVID-19 pandemic will not be of much benefit if demand description are not addressed. Currently, several main commodities of approaching harvest with limited demand due to the reduced mobility and people suffering from the economy, price will be depressed. In some cases, an anomaly occurs when the price decreases at the farm level but increases at the consumer level. Online marketing is still not a solution that embraces most farmers in remote areas. For example, a limited survey conducted by the Odessa Indonesia Foundation in the main market of West Java in Gedebage showed that around 50% of traders of agricultural products had returned home due to loss. Only a few still survived, relying on a profit of 20,000 to 30,000 rupiah per day. On this side, because of this abnormal situation, the state must play its role more in linking demand and production.
Okay, like that, agricultural sector activities, especially the food crop agricultural sector, must be given space to remain active in production with certain limitation during the social restriction period or PSBB by maintaining standard COVID-19 protection protocols. This is due to the essential nature and urgency discussed above. Apart from the characteristic of the production process, the risk of transmission is relatively low compared to other sectors, such as manufacturing or service. The agricultural sectors is also brought in scope, so a more detailed study is needed regarding what sub-agricultural sectors need relaxation and not on a case-by-case basis. Its implementation, however, must be monitored closely because in its states there are several production processes that are more risky. Farmers, especially sharecroppers, are a vulnerable group in terms of the economy. The risk of being exposed to the virus and mortality due to being infected with the COVID-19 virus. Anticipation and preparation must be done carefully because the level of knowledge and education of rural communities is less than in urban areas. Public campaigns must be more massive and structured, using the most effective methods and channels for the above target groups, especially for cultivating the habits required by the standard COVID-19 protection protocol. Okay, elements of society, both formal, such village officials, and informal, such leaders, influential people, and informal influence in rural areas, as well as community organizations, must be involved in education related to the COVID-19 protocol. And then, in addition, health protection equipment in rural areas must also be provided, especially masks as well as hand sanitizer facilities in public places and production centers. Likewise, the prohibition of going home must be emphasized along with encouraging rural communities to prohibit their family members from going home. This protocol and standard operating procedure or SOP for COVID-19 protection must be prepared in advance and properly socialized to the community in rural areas before the relaxation of economic activities during the social restriction period or PSBB. That's all from me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, once we listen to the debate between pro and cons arguments, now I will give the conclusion. Recommendation for academics, observers, or agricultural sector researchers. This is the right time to examine the weaknesses of the agriculture sector in Indonesia. The existence of a crisis coupled with almost complete autarky or international trade restriction provides experimental space for our agriculture system to be tested so that we can examine the holes of weakness so that food security and our goals of food self-sufficiency in the future can be achieved. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close this debate, we want to give a quote from the legendary Indonesian economic Muhammad Sadli with his Sadli's law. Good times make bad policies. Bad time make good policies. That's all, and thank you.